So in a world of high-speed, low-drag tactical folders, is there still a place for traditional pocket knives? Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Today I'd like to discuss the topic of traditional pocket knives. And I want to look at their roles and capabilities in a modern EDC era, as well as some of their drawbacks and shortcomings. But most importantly, I want to highlight something I believe we can learn from traditional pocket knives, as well as the generation that carried them. Now, over the years, I've actually slimmed down my traditional pocket knife collection and really limited them to the ones that I believe have the most utility in my particular use case. Now, as you can see on this spread, I have some that represent the old style of doing things with these GECs right here, as well as modern iterations of old style patterns with this tactile and this Rosecraft. Now let's start off with this tactile Ranger right here, because in a lot of ways, this represents the dichotomy between old world utility and modern technology, leading to the question, why on earth would a modern company like Tactile even bother creating an old style pocket knife with new materials? Tactile Knife Co. is a company that is more than capable of manufacturing the highest quality modern folders. So why waste their time and efforts on a traditional pattern with traditional mechanisms? Now that leads into a second question. Why on earth is a company like Great Eastern Cutlery, who manufactures knives in the old world style, still so popular? What is it about these traditional knives that still grabs the attention of many in the EDC community? Well, before I answer that question, let's have a little story time for some context. And this story time begins with this knife right here, the GEC 23L. Now, as you guys can see, this is a very limited 2021 special factory assembly. These are blades that are assembled specifically for their yearly gathering. And the ones that don't get sold at that gathering are available only at their factory. Right around Father's Day of 2021, my father actually visited me in Pennsylvania. So I thought an awesome Father's Day gift would be to take him out to the GEC factory store and show him around, then buy him a knife. Now, while we were at the factory store, we actually bumped into Bill Howard, the owner and operator of Great Eastern Cutlery. Now, he was kind enough to come up to my father, introduce himself, and actually give us a tour of the whole facility. And my father and Bill actually had an amazing conversation. They actually discussed the old style of doing things. And their conversation ranged from the time and effort that is poured into each one of the knives, as well as how it symbolizes the care and craftsmanship of former generations. They talked and laughed for a little bit, and then me and my dad walked into the factory store. And when I told him he could pick out any knife from the cases that they had there, this was the knife that grabbed his attention. Now, for clarity's sake, it wasn't actually this knife. I purchased this one as a matching set later on. And the knife that he picked out, I actually ended up gifting to my nephew who was going into the armed forces. Some of you may be asking, why would I gift a knife that I gave to my father to my nephew? Well, because later that year in 2021, my father would pass away from COVID complications. And after visiting my mom in Arizona shortly after he passed, she gave me back the knife that I had gifted him. And since I had already purchased a matching one, I ended up giving that original one to my nephew on his birthday. But in a lot of ways, this knife represents the best of my father's philosophy regarding pocket knives and everyday carry. He was a Navy man himself and was quite familiar with knives and tools and always had those things around. But his mindset was never one of a very tactical prowess, rather a practical prowess. He believed in being educated and well-versed, as well as skilled in every area of life, just good enough so that he can be helpful to his loved ones and friends. But most importantly, he was rarely in a rush. If anything, my father took his time with people and with tasks. He figured if he was ever going to be doing anything, it would be best to do it well as opposed to do it quickly. The patience and care that my father demonstrated in life was reflected in his knife choice that day. He saw something in that case that was equally as beautiful as it was well built. Something that didn't have the high speed, low drag energy of today, but the slow, intentional, and deliberate aura of yesteryear. And you know, there's a lot to be said regarding modern folders, their quick deployment, their strength, as well as their high technology and advanced materials. And practically speaking, for a quick everyday cutting task, these are just better than these. They're faster to deploy, they're stronger, built with better materials, easier to carry, and in a lot of cases still have the high quality fit and finish that these traditional knives demonstrate. But I'll be honest, as beautiful as this is and as much as I love Hinderer knives, this just doesn't have the same charm as these. These traditional knives are attached with memories. Memories of a time where people weren't in as much of a rush as we are today, where people took the time because they had the time. This GEC 47 Viper that I have right here is another special factory assembly from the year following my father's passing. And it was a gift from my wife and daughter who took me to the GEC store in honor of the trip that me and my father took the year previous. With my daughter's help, I picked out this beautiful thing. And this knife to me is soaked with so many memories of that day that every time I carry it, I'm honored to do so. I still use this thing. I'll cut open packages, but I do take a lot of care with it. And when I'm using a slip joint like this, I remember to be deliberate and cautious because there is no locking mechanism. Because in deploying it, you have to be so intentional. And with a blade this sharp and slicey, you have to be precise with the cuts that you're making. So in my opinion, one of the most important aspects of traditional knives are the traditions that birth them forth. A tradition of merging beauty and utility, a merging of form and function. These traditional knives really highlight the point that the care that was poured into making them should be the care that we should take when using them. And that's a point we really shouldn't so easily skip over in our high-paced society that we live in today. For example, most traditional pocket knives only come with basic carbon steels on the blades, but it was using simple carbon steels like this that actually taught me how to sharpen and maintain an edge, as well as how to care for them in order to keep them somewhat rust and patina free. The slow deployment of a traditional pocket knife, as well as the lack of a locking mechanism, has taught me how to be very cautious with pocket knives. The lack of a pocket clip on these traditional knives has actually given me a greater appreciation for other craftsmen, such as leather workers. As most of the times I'll carry one of these traditional pocket knives in my wallet, which is made by Hitch and Timber, or this DP steel and leather clip slip. And the styling of these traditional knives have been so iconic they've actually influenced other designs in the modern space as well, such as this clip point on this Hinderer Eclipse, and even the trapper pattern found on this Tactile Ranger. So though the materials and mechanisms on these traditional knives may seem dated, they still represent the iconic styling and artisan craftsmanship that birthed forth the modern knife industry. Lastly, I think traditional knives remind us just to slow down for a little bit, to remember the lessons from those who came before us, and to remember that fastest isn't always best. For me, these two traditional knives represent memory and legacy. They represent me taking what I learned from my father and implementing it into my daily life now. And they remind me to take the time to slow down and enjoy the beautiful life that God has given me. We can get so busy and burdened down with our lives that we actually forget to live. And to me, that is a tradition that I think is worth building on. So let me know what you think down in the comments below. Do you have a role for traditional knives in your everyday carry? And if you enjoyed this video, feel free to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to this channel for more videos just like this. Until next time, God bless.